Still a solicitor, you sad, boring bastard.
Wednesday on BBC1.
I say where you are! Where's Madson?
Coping with injustice.
Mindless violence solves nothing.
Causes friction between friends.
Is this why you want to be a lawyer? So you can charge 200 quid an hour while people like Sackett chapped out the streets?
And tension between lovers.
Get real, Madson. This is a top London law firm. We don't take on charity cases.
We're not talking about charity, we're talking about common justice.
Madson, Wednesday, 9:30 on BBC1.
Most persons were blind or dogmatic that it couldn't be done, so don't try.
Over the last 50 years, spare part surgery has gone from an idle dream to a life-saving reality. Some paid the price.
Looking back, they knew she'd die.
While pioneering surgeons were uncovering an emotional and ethical minefield.
You can't take the heart. It's beating, it's alive.
Against Nature, Part 2 of Knife to the Heart. Tomorrow at 10:30 on BBC1.
The first of tonight's films on BBC1 is an upbeat comedy thriller. Michael J. Fox and James Woods, a cracking crime the hard way in 25 minutes. Before that, on BBC1, the main evening news with Peter Sissons.
Russia is to expel a number of British diplomats accused of running a spy ring from the Moscow embassy. The Foreign Secretary says it's totally unjustified and warns that Britain will retaliate. The house fire that killed 4 children. Police say they believe it was started deliberately. And still thrilling the crowds at 60, the warplane that became a legend. Good evening. In one of the biggest espionage rows since the end of the Cold War, the Russians say they're expelling a number of British diplomats who, they say, have been buying political and defense secrets. The diplomats are accused of employing a Russian government official with direct access to classified material. The details of the expulsions will be revealed tomorrow, but it's believed that at least 4 will be asked to leave.
The police guard outside the British Embassy was about as informative as the diplomats inside. They were studiously giving no comment as they worked out how to handle what looks like the biggest espionage row between Russia and Britain since 1989. It's only 2 weeks since it was all smiles between the two countries, as John Major held friendly talks with Boris Yeltsin. But this morning, the British ambassador was summoned to the Russian Foreign Ministry to receive a stern protest over what the Russians called the illegal espionage activity of British intelligence officers using the embassy as cover. The former KGB, now known as the Federal Security Service, still employs thousands of counter-espionage agents to track down Western spies. Today's expulsions came shortly after it announced it had caught a Russian spy red-handed in contact with his British spy masters. The Russians said the man worked for a government department and had provided Britain with defence and military secrets. Analysts say that's unusual in these days of East-West cooperation.
Right now, I would say that industrial and financial espionage is probably more important and more frequent than the traditional James Bond type espionage.
7 years ago, Russia expelled 11 British nationals in a tit-for-tat exchange after Britain threw out the same number of Russians, accusing them of spying. It's possible that London will respond to the latest expulsions in kind. Britain has described the Russian allegations against its diplomats as completely unjustified, and tonight the Foreign Office said there would be an appropriate response. That probably means we're in for a round of Cold War-style tit-for-tat expulsions. Angus Roxburgh, BBC News, Moscow.
This evening, however, the Russians expressed the hope that the row wouldn't affect relations with Britain. But here the Foreign Secretary has confirmed the government will consider expelling Russians if the British diplomats are thrown out of Moscow.
Absolutely no evidence has been given to our ambassador or to the United Kingdom to support any allegations. And as far as we're concerned, these allegations are unjustified. If any action is taken against British personnel, there will, of course, be a significant response. The nature of that response will, of course, depend on what action the Russians do take, if any action is taken.
Police in Southampton investigating the fire which killed 4 young children are continuing to question a man. A magistrate has given them until tomorrow afternoon to interview him. This morning, the police confirmed that the blaze was started deliberately.
As neighbours continued to bring flowers to the home in which the children died, Hampshire police confirmed the family's worst fears. Detailed forensic examinations have revealed the fire was started deliberately, using some sort of accelerant, though the police refused to confirm it was petrol which was thrown through the letterbox. At a news conference, the man leading the hunt spoke of his abject horror at the killings.
I mean, 4 children have died. I just, words almost fail me in thinking of what must have gone through the mind of someone who may have set light to a house with a whole family in it. It's difficult to add any words. The English language doesn't provide easy words to cover that situation.
2 sisters, 10-year-old Alison Good and Nicola, who was 8, and their 2 brothers, including 12-year-old Terry, died in the blaze, from which their parents escaped unhurt. Another sister is still in hospital being treated for burns, while the community shares in the family's grief.
I think everybody feels the same, upset, hurt for them, you know. I mean, we all got children. It's just something that should never have happened.
Now a full-scale murder hunt, every inch of nearby land in Sholing is being searched for further clues. Witnesses are also being sought, especially anyone who saw a car or bicycle in the vicinity in the early hours of Sunday. For the moment, the police are still unclear about a motive for this attack, but they have confirmed that a man arrested yesterday morning is still in custody after magistrates granted an extension to question him further. John McIntyre, BBC News, Southampton.
The Agriculture Minister Douglas Hogg has been lobbying other EU farm ministers over the beef crisis during an informal meeting in Italy. The beef ban isn't on the formal agenda for the talks, and the Commission says that Wednesday's meeting of the Veterinary Committee will not recommend its relaxation. Here, some Conservative MPs are again calling on the government, if the ban isn't lifted, to find a way to retaliate.
European farm ministers were touring a winery as well as an olive grove at their meeting today. Almost everything but beef on the agenda. Progress is still frustratingly slow. With the government under mounting pressure from Tory Eurosceptics at home, the minister in the front line of the debate in Europe has been lobbying hard for a breakthrough.
We very much want to see the EU ban lifted, and lifted with all possible speed.
But this local butcher's an example of what Britain's up against. His beef sales, like sales all over Italy, are down 40% in recent weeks, though he's doing all he can to rebuild confidence by offering only local beef and the farmer's phone number. But here, Tory Eurosceptics are becoming more impatient by the day. Today, a former minister suggested leaving Britain's chair empty at the coming Intergovernmental Conference on Europe's future.
The government has been right to negotiate up to this point, but I think the government itself realizes that it's got to start getting really tough. And the way to do it is to say we're not going to have any further discussions about the future of Europe until this matter is resolved.
That kind of talk upsets other senior Tories.
Each person is entitled to their views, but they need to learn how to put them in a civilized and constructive way, or adding to the unity of the party, rather than just sounding childishly divisive. And this is what these kind of comments do sound like. Real childishness of frustrated children. That's not grown-up politics at all.
Some other senior Conservatives are also losing all patience with their Eurosceptical colleagues, and they'll be saying so publicly and privately in coming days. They're frustrated that the Prime Minister's appeals for unity already seem to have fallen on deaf ears. Ironically, the intervention of these mainstream Conservatives could also add to the impression of a divided party. John Pienaar, BBC News, Westminster.
The Shadow Chancellor, Gordon Brown, has indicated that he does intend to press ahead with proposals to scrap child benefit for 16 to 18-year-olds. Mr. Brown's plan alarmed some on the left of the Labour Party who believe it could deter children from poorer families staying on at school. But the Shadow Chancellor says Labour can't avoid tough choices. The Israeli government has described as sheer nonsense suggestions that its attack on a UN base in southern Lebanon last month was deliberate. More than 100 civilians were killed when the Israelis shelled the camp at Kana during their offensive against Hezbollah guerrillas. Amateur video obtained by UN investigators shows a reconnaissance plane flying over the camp at the time of the attack.
The amateur video was shot while the attack on Kana was still going on. The drone could have transmitted pictures of the refugees that were sheltering in Kana if its cameras were focused on the camp. The Israelis insist they were not.
We checked and rechecked. The army was very careful with its story. And the army admitted when it made a mistake, we made a mistake. We are terribly sorry. We regret it.